Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast. This one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to sound a little bit different because if anyone listened to the last show was Sandy's last show. I'm sure he'll be back as a guest, but he decided to move on and he's not going to be co hosting regularly with me anymore. And stepping up to the plate to fill those big shoes is Quentin D'Souza. Hey, Quentin.
Hey, hey Rob, how's it going?
Very good. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, everybody listening knows that they've got to go over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca, sign up for our links there so you can see what Quentin's up to with Durham REI and all the other fun stuff that he's doing, all the coaching he provides. We're going to talk about that a little bit as we go here. Quentin, I'd like you to just explain some of the things that you have to offer. And also, you can see what I'm up to over there and learn about what's going on with my team in Ontario as well as Costa Rica. So we've always got some exciting things going on. So if you want to learn more about that, again, go over to breakthroughreipodcast.ca and go over to iTunes and like and subscribe to our show. Leave us a comment and review and tell us what you want to hear more of. If you want to hear different topics that you haven't heard on the show before, let us know what they are. And we're going to be sure to get some new and exciting and fun guests on the show. And we're going to keep on learning a lot from them. So Quentin, welcome.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. I'd like to just hop in and introduce George here. So George is a real estate investor, an investor-focused realtor, and financial independence advocate based in the Belleville, Ontario area. He started investing in the Belleville market with a focus on smaller multifamily properties and quickly took on more and more complex BRRRRs, duplex conversions, student rentals. He's done them all. Within 3 years of investing, he went on to acquire 15 units that generated enough cash flow to exceed his pharmacist income and allowed him to retire by the age of 31, earning himself the nickname Cash Flow George. Now he teaches clients how to invest in real estate with the proven strategies, helping them achieve their own real estate goals, whatever they may be. Thanks,
Thank you,
George.
Quentin.
Thanks, George. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We're going to learn a lot from you today. I know that. And I really like the idea that we're going to focus on achieving financial independence through real estate, which is a great topic. And kind of something that I wanted to shift the show more towards is what are the rewards of what we get as real estate investors, not just the nuts and bolts of how to get started, which is great too. Obviously, you can't get to what it has afforded you until you learn about all of the things that it takes to get there. So there's going to be that too, but I really do want to learn of what people like, what this investing has afforded people, and so that's kind of what we're going to focus on with you today. And I noticed, Quentin, you really don't like talking about yourself, do you? Because I'm trying to throw it to you and you're like, let's introduce George. Like,
Yeah, I'm okay.
we gotta
People
we
will
gotta
get to
learn a
know
little bit
me.
about you.
People will
We'll
get to
do
know
that
me.
later, I guess.
Sure.
Well, welcome to the show, George. Let's just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as Quentin mentioned, I'm a real estate investor and now a realtor in the Belleville area. I really, most of my time, uh, for my clients, I focus on helping my clients invest in real estate because, as we mentioned in our bio, I've made such a journey through investing myself using all these different strategies, and nowadays I use my knowledge and expertise and network to help my own clients invest in real estate in the Belleville market as well. That's what I'm mostly about. And as a former pharmacist, I seem to have positioned myself in a space where, when the news of when I left, when I was able to retire early, a lot of fellow healthcare professionals came out asking, they're looking for the same thing, they're looking to achieve the same through real estate. And as a result, I've kind of became an advocate in that space, helping others retire from their professional jobs early using real estate and kind of guiding them how that process works.
Very good. What about what about just life? Tell us about that too.
Oh, life. I'm a workaholic. I like to My life is mostly 99% real estate or either for my own or my friend clients, but I'm a I'm a big gym guy. I like going to the gym. I just came back from the gym earlier. I go 7 days a week, roughly 2 hours every day. I used to compete in Olympic weightlifting, and that was
Oh,
a big
really?
regiment of my life
Wow.
for several years. Actually, when I first graduated, I took 6 months off just so I could train full time, just because I wanted to know what it felt like. Um, so that regiment has kind of carried with me, even though I'm not in that space anymore. The years of me training specific days of the week for this many hours and following a specific diet that's effectively following an Excel spreadsheet, that's still carried forward to this day, and I'm still regimented in that space. And I'm not as strict on myself in that sense, but I like to have a how would you say it? A very predictable life in that space.
Routine.
Routine, exactly. That's the word I'm looking for.
Uh, You know what? It's interesting. I kind of seen different sides of real estate investors, and as as they move along, they've got like this personal scorecard, and it's like the real estate investing and the cash flow is one part of that. Then the health and fitness is another, and then like relationships and family is another, and travel is another. It seems to be like it's very interesting to see and you know to see that in different real estate investors. So I'm just curious. So why did you start investing in real estate and why Belleville?
Well, why Belleville is an interesting story because at the I graduated as a pharmacist. I started working right away, but my girlfriend at the time. Oh, she's still my girlfriend. But she had a hard time finding a job after she graduated. We graduated the same year, and I pretty much told her, as a pharmacist, I can work anywhere, anywhere in Ontario. That's where I'm licensed. So you find a job anywhere, and I'll follow you. And she ended up getting a job in Belleville, Ontario, which I didn't know existed at the time. And I followed there, and that's where I ended up. And why did I start investing in real estate? That's an interesting story because I went to the pharmacy profession, um, because I was good at the sciences, and in undergrad I realized that I like it, but unless you're like a academic professor, there's really no profession for you in terms of if you're in the hearts like biology, chemistry, sciences. So quickly had to pick something that actually made money, and pharmacy was what I gravitated towards. And I thought it'd be like, oh yeah, I like drugs. I like how they interact with the body. I like learning the effects of how, playing with this gets this effect. But as soon as I graduated, I started working, I realized it wasn't quite what I was expecting. It was more customer service, dealing with angry people on a daily basis. Frontline, it was really frontline customer service. That's what it was. And unfortunately, it was people treated you like crap in the profession. They, I like to describe it as people treat you like a McDonald's drive-through. They want their drugs quick and drawn, they're fast and they're impatient for it. And on the other end of this, on the other end is you sure you might be the one taking the order and putting it together, but it's one thing to like if you said no pickles and I forgot to do that. It's different in the pharmacy because any mistake can kill you. So it's the combination of the necessity of accuracy and doing it right, and then balancing that with someone yelling at you because you didn't do it in 5 minutes, and the customer service aspect of it. That's what within a week of me working full time in as a pharmacist, I knew that like this is not for me, and I needed to get out as soon as I can. That's I dug in straight into like how do I retire early. I started Googling. I found some Reddits, and I started off just putting away as much of my income into stocks and index funds in the beginning, but then later on I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was my gateway drug into real estate. And from then on, I started investing in real estate with the explicit goal of generating as much cash flow as possible so I can retire.
So then how did you make that transition from the like when did you know it was time to shift away from the pharmacy?
Well, with this, with investing in stocks and index funds, that it was a much longer time frame for when I knew I was going to retire because using that model, I would have to it would I think it was projected to hit there around age 35 or 40, assuming I was putting away the same amount of money as I was before. But and at the time there wasn't any pressure because at the time I didn't even own my own home yet. So it was I paid off I had like a 60,000 student loan or something like that, and I was so aggressively paying that back. I've paid it off exactly 1 year within me even starting my full-time job. And from then on, I was just putting away money into my index funds.
How old were
And
you about at that time?
I graduated in 2015. I was 24.
Okay.
Yeah, pharmacy school is it's 4 years on top of your undergrad. So um and right after that, after I moved to Belleville, we signed for a pre-construction home that was going to be built a year later. And I didn't have energy to think about uh how I was going to retire early. It was focused on I got to put away more money for the next stage of deposit. So it was just it was always focusing on the immediate need of instead of thinking about the big picture future goal I wanted. I had to serve my immediate needs. Uh, as soon as we closed on our house, I was instantly hit with a wave of depression. It's like this is my life now. This is this is what it's gonna be. I just gonna show up to work, and that's when I actually discovered Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, that
And
purple book has helped a lot of people.
well, I remember like it was we closed on the house that I'm in right now like back in October, and I remember in December both of us were pretty like this is our life. We work till we die now, and we walked into chapters just to kind of uh you know freshen our thoughts. And I saw this Asian guy on this book cover. I'm like, who is this guy? And I picked it up I read the back and it's like I gotta buy this.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like a lot of people have that same story, which is cool because that book has just done it for so many people. So then you took the knowledge, they got out of the book. What'd you do with it? How did you first get into like what was your first purchase and maybe some of the challenges that were involved in it?
Yeah. Like as soon as I finished reading the book, I immediately started educating myself more in the real estate space. In the beginning, it was a lot of podcasts, starting off with like bigger pockets and things like that, and then I realized American things are dramatic, very different to Canadian real estate. So I started listening to a lot of real estate podcasts, including yours, Rob, and just educating myself as much as possible. And I quickly just started looking into multifamily properties as much as I can. My first investment, funny enough, it wasn't a multifamily. It was actually a student rental property in Belleville. It was a very interesting property. It was a rooming house where it was 7 bedrooms sharing as one kind of dwelling with I think there was 3 bathrooms and a kitchen and living room, things like that. That was one dwelling. And then on the other side, it was a one separate one bed, one bath apartment. And it was one of those big Victorian homes. I think how they set up is you don't have the main home is the for the wealthy family, and then the one bed, one bath is the servants' quarters. You know how that's set up. So
Mhm.
that's how it was set up, and I bought that as a student rental. Um, Not knowing what I was doing, I thought, I graduated not too many years ago. I understand the student experience, and I thought I looked at the numbers like this thing could easily make $5,000 a month if I run it right. And at the time, my mortgage was only something like $2,000. So it looked like it was a very uh, lucrative opportunity. What I quickly learned was the school here in Belleville is Loyalist College, which is kind of more of like a community college. So it's about 50-50 international students and 50% domestic students. And the domestic students, most of them pick Loyalist College solely because it's the one that's close by. So majority of them just commute. They don't need student housing. And I had to quickly shift to marketing towards international students, which is a completely different market. Um, for those, like there's the difference between international students who go to like the big name universities, like U of T. I see the Chinese students driving Lambos to school. These aren't those kind of things. These are usually a little bit very come from modest backgrounds. They don't have that much money to spend, and a lot of them would ask to go two people per room to even save money, which at the time I those rooms were quite small. So even if I wanted to, they wouldn't fit. But regardless, I was able to fill that place very quickly, and I was generating $5,600 a month, all inclusive for that place.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a big fan of my student rentals in Peterborough, so um, so I know exactly what you mean. A little bit more tricky when it comes to managing, the day to day, but that's why, you have the option of doing it if you've got that time, or you can pass it off to somebody else. So, do you still have student rentals?
So that one I actually sold back in 2021, and the reason
Mhm.
for that was the year following the pandemic, and the international students, they didn't everything was online that year. So some of my international students started moving out, and I realized I had a hard time replacing them. And room rentals, at least back then in Belleville, if you're looking for the locals, they're generally not the most high quality tenants. And I
Mhm.
tried it for a few people, it just wasn't working out, and I wasn't willing to ride it out for another year before the students came back, and that was when the market was spiking anyway, so I decided to sell at the time.
Okay. Okay. So no, you didn't get back into student rentals.
No, and partly the reason was at the time I was trying to acquire more, and with how that property was set up, those were rented room by room. They're not
Mhm.
like in like university you can rent to like five, six groups of friends together. This one was all individually, and I had to struggle with scaling because a lot of lenders all they saw was debt and they wouldn't include the income from the student rentals.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
big challenge with financing all the time. Lots of different strategies around that, for financing. But maybe you can tell us about the Quinte Real Estate Investors Association.
Yeah. So when I first started investing in the Belleville area, there wasn't like nobody knew where Belleville was, and there was very few of our real estate investors here, and maybe there were more, but they weren't the kind that would go to community meetups or even be on Facebook. And I saw what Quentin was doing in Durham REI, and the Kingston guys were doing their own thing, and I was a little disappointed that nothing existed in the Belleville area, and I realized, wait a minute, what am I doing? I can just start one. I can just be the guy that starts it all up. And I did that so that there would be a community for people to collaborate and share. And you know how investors are. We're not even some people may think that we're competing against each other for the same products, but it's with the abundance mindset is that there's enough deals for everybody. And I find investors are generally very willing to help each other out regarding like if you need a contractor, they'll happily refer you somebody. If you need some help, just like figuring out what the best investment strategy is, or if you're struggling with tenants, usually investors are very willing to help each other out. And I just wanted to put together a community where that collaboration can happen. So that's what I started that back in, I think, either 2019 or 2020. And it's grown to almost 1,000 people now. And we regularly host meetups right now we're doing them every 2 months. And it's just a meetup event where people can network, and we give a brief update on the local economy, the market, and what some changes may be happening. We try to keep it local. So when we have speakers come, usually they're talking about something local related. So, for example, we two two events ago we had Robert Cranadon come speak. He is an investor. He's a professor at the Loyalist College, and he's vice chair of the Committee of Adjustments. So he came in to talk about the process of minor variances and severances, and how specifically how that works, and how he utilizes that strategy in his own investments to make the best use of his properties. And more recently, we had a property manager that specifically manages international student rentals because Nobody else does that. And he being from that specific ethnicity group, there's a lot of culture challenges associated with it, and he's stepped up to the plate to manage these student rentals, and we had him speak in our last event as well.
Yeah, sounds like some good guests. So obviously, if you've got 1,000 people, that's not in person?
No, no. So our meetups, so we have a Facebook group that we mostly collaborate, and when we have meetups, we host them at a local event. I think usually we get around 50, 60 people attend each time. Uh, Admission's completely free. I don't like to gatekeep in knowledge, and yeah, it's just a place for people to collaborate and talk. And the Facebook group, people ask questions on a regular basis, and people are always so willing to help each other out.
And what's that called again? How do people find it on Facebook?
It is the Quinty. I in the Facebook group, I believe it's called the Quinty Real Estate Investors. I can give a link for you guys for people to join the group as well.
Yep, we'll have all the links for all your stuff in the show notes later on. Um,
Okay.
and I just want to, sorry, go ahead, Quentin.
No, I was just curious, like just back on a personal note, like what freedoms have you achieved through real estate investing that you may not have had when you were a pharmacist?
Well, freedom of time and space specifically. Maybe not so much when I was self-managing my properties, but now I've outsourced my property management to property managers. Effectively, I can really be anywhere I want and well, anywhere I want, anytime I want. But more specifically, as someone I'm not the kind of person who would go on vacation even if I was retired. What I decided to do with my newfound freedom was take risks in starting a new, you know, what's the right word for it? New ventures. So specifically myself for being a real estate agent, it's for a lot of people it can be a scary step to take because for a 100% commission-based profession, you could very well go 6 months without a single paycheck. So it allowed me to do that from a very comfortable place where even if I wasn't making any income specifically, I wouldn't be concerned about making my ends meet, feeding myself, paying my mortgage, things like that. And I think honestly, it made me a better real estate agent because I wasn't pushing anyone just for the paycheck. I was genuinely trying to help people as much as possible because that's just what I like to do.
Very good. And I want to go back because I don't want to skip over this. I think it's important to talk about some challenges. You mentioned briefly some of the financing challenges that come up, especially if you're looking at something like a student rental in the portfolio, that kind of thing. What are some of the other challenges that you faced?
Well, other challenges with student rentals, you mean?
No, just in general, like, along the way, where have you stumbled and how have you gotten back up?
You
Okay.
know, you have more properties than like most of the population, right? Like if we think about Canadians in general, you know, most like 97% of them will have their own principal residence if they own anything. You know, you're part of that 3% that owns more than, you know, two properties and probably, you know, 20% of that who owns more than three properties, right? So you've got to had, you know, different challenges that have come up as you're growing and scaling.
Absolutely. So as I got further into real estate investing, I got more comfortable with purchasing properties that needed renovations, and I knew that's where the real money is to be made in terms of lifting a forced appreciation. But as someone who grew up fairly white collar, in a white collar profession, like until I bought my own property, I had to YouTube how to change a furnace filter when I had to change it for the first time. That's how, uh, I'm not the kind of guy who had a lot of experience being on the tools. So when it came to renovations, it was a big challenge in terms of communicating with the contractors and knowing exactly what needs to be done. I really had to do kind of go back to school in that sense and learn all about how a house is really put together so that I don't sound like an idiot when I talk to the contractors and also so they don't, take advantage of you. At the same time, I didn't understand how unavailable and how hard it is to find contractors could be. And as a result of early poor time management skills, I actually ended up having to do some of the renovations myself because I cornered myself by saying the tenants can move in at this time and the flooring would be done before then. And I had to, I actually ended up doing a kitchen by myself, installing it and doing the flooring by myself, which I think honestly every investor should do at least once so they can understand how it works. So when they talk to a contractor, they know what they're talking about. It was honestly, that was when I remember there was a stupid August 2022 summer. I just finished 8 hours at the pharmacy and I went to go lay flooring for that unit. And I was like, oh man, these contractors, they charge, what did they charge? Like $1.50, $2 a square foot for labor for laying this flooring down. I'm looking at myself, I'm doing this. I'm listening to music, I'm chilling out. I felt more relaxed than I did in my job. And I'd ran a number, it's like, I think I'm laying more than 25 square foot an hour. I'm pretty sure I am. Am I making $50 an hour doing this technically? And at that's when it's like that's when I realized I'd rather do this than be in the pharmacy, honestly.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
is something like I notice a lot of people will say, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I just remember thinking the first time I heard someone say this, I think it was our friend Jeff Wood that said this, Quentin. He's like, he's like, I don't do the things I don't want to do. So I don't cut my grass, I don't, and I was thinking at the time, I'm like, man, I really enjoy cutting my grass. It lets my mind shut off, right? So, I mean, when there is things like that that you can get that you can do, and it just relaxes you, which is funny because it's work, right? And a lot of people would say, "What? You're crazy! Like, what are you talking about? That relaxes you? That's something that you like to do?" I and everyone plays in other people's jobs sometimes, right?
Yeah. You know what? I think also one of the things that I heard is that, when you were making the transition, your days weren't just 8-hour days. They were longer and you had to work harder in order to achieve the freedom that you did. And I don't think that gives enough, like we don't give that enough credence. Like oftentimes people who are working down this path, they're probably doing two jobs or three jobs for a
Yeah.
short amount of time to be able
Hmm.
to achieve that, right? So could you describe a little bit about that for us, George, that time?
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty hectic. It was especially in the fast growth phase where I would be working during the day and then sometimes I might have be submitting offers while I'm at work and then counter them back. I'd run to the bathroom and do a quick call, counter back, and then go back to work. And then after work, sometimes I would be renovating a place, painting something. In the beginning, I didn't have as much fun, so if I could do it myself, I did it. And even in the beginning, for snow removal, I took care of the properties myself just because I could. And it was very it was a lot to deal with, but I
Right.
knew that the job wasn't I couldn't stand it any longer. And if I could continue that any longer, it would be I would leave, I would retire, quit, whether I was financially free or not. So I had to do this. There was no other option.
Yeah, and I think a good point you're making too is that, and Quentin, you too, is that this isn't a magic bullet thing like real estate investing. If you are, if you don't have funds, let's say at the beginning, and you're coming at it from where I did, where George did, then you go in and where Quentin did, sorry, Quentin, when you when you start out, you're doing like you're going to your regular job and then you're going and keep it and you work like as long as it takes to get the job done, right? So, and then later you start to see the rewards that come from that. What do we got here? Uh, okay, some other challenges. Any more challenges?
Any more challenges? I found property management to be particularly challenging for me, and it has nothing to do with my time or energy.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the uncertainty of what a potential call from a tenant was about, it started affecting my mental health. What I found was every time the phone rang or a notification popped on my phone, I started having like a mini panic attack because it could be the sink is leaking slightly or the house is on fire. So I really got to a point where I realized even though I was saving X number of dollars doing property management, I was pretty efficient at it in terms of dispatching maintenance and things like that. The mental impact on me was not worth it, and that's when I decided to outsource to property management.
And so at what point was that? Like how many properties do you have at that time? And
It
just to give people an idea maybe of when to start to scale like that.
it was right when I acquired my 10th door,
Uh-huh.
and it was while I was working full time.
Okay. Right on, right on. So when did you actually transition from the pharmacy?
I left March 2022. That was when, so I actually, about 6 months prior to that, I realized I achieved financial freedom and I didn't have to work anymore regarding the cash flow. But at the time, I still had some projects I needed to finish up and I wanted to refinance my properties
Uh-huh.
before I left. And
Smart
they needed,
move.
they,
Smart
I
move.
like it. I like it.
yeah. So I waited till I could refinance everything and get all my money out while I could still prove my income.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. Also, um, at the time I was getting like the stress of being at the job that I was incredibly miserable. It was taking a big toll on my health. And I actually took like I think the month of October or November prior to that, I actually took a whole month off because I was feeling so burnt out. And that's when I knew I had to do it sooner rather than later. And March is pharmacist license renewal. It's $1,000. So I needed to do that before that because I was gonna pay $1,000 and get my license for a whole year. I wanted to
Hmm.
give it up.
Interesting.
You know what? A lot of people that I talk to complain that there's no cash flow in Ontario. And I think that, what it is that people have like a limited their, what's out there because they only look in Toronto or they look in Vancouver or they look in Ottawa. George, where do you find cash flow in Ontario? Cash flow, George.
uh, well, I love the Belleville, Ontario market, especially because a lot of people go for cash flow. They start chasing Alberta or they start going to Timmins, Sudbury, but there's something comforting about having a property that you can actually drive to in one day or one without having to sleep overnight. Like we're only 2 hours, technically an hour and a half if you're on the Markham Scarborough side from Toronto, depending how fast you drive. And so I love this market. We are uniquely positioned. If you think about it, if you go from Toronto eastward, the prices, go down the further you're away from Toronto, up to a point, which is Belleville. And once you go past Belleville, it starts going up again because you're going towards Kingston, and Kingston's higher price. So we are uniquely positioned where we're just right on the 401, uh, really the bottom of the housing pricing market here. And our rents here are as high as you would see in like Kitchener, Hamilton, Oshawa, while being practically 60-70% of the purchase price there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
interesting. So are you saying that even with today's interest rates, that you can cash flow in Belleville?
yes, absolutely. Um, Especially if you're doing like a duplex conversion or if you buy a existing multi-family. Um, right now, what I'm noticing is that the ones that are fully tenanted with below market rents, the sellers are actually coming to terms with the reality and they're actually pricing them at a point where they're actually cash flow positive despite the significantly below market rents. And you're going in cash flow positive, maybe not a lot to begin with, but as soon as one of them turns over, you're increasing your cash flow by $700, right? And and if you also there's the student rental market, and the student rental market here is bonkers. You're looking at $900 per room here if you
Oh
furnish it.
yeah.
Yeah, and you're you can buy a little if you're looking for something a little bit in a rougher area or like and more outdated, you can pick up a 4-bed house for under 400 here.
Wow, great. Well, what about the caps on international students? Do you think that's going to have any effect in the Belleville area?
I don't think so because, for example, they are changing the rules regarding the private colleges. So now we're gonna have less students in Canada in general, but they're gonna be funneled more towards the publicly funded colleges because the private ones aren't gonna get work permits anymore. That was recently proposed. And for example, BC, they have, I think it was something about a ban for international students. So they're gonna just means more are gonna get funneled towards Ontario. So I think students in Canada overall will reduce, but the number coming to Belleville will remain the same, if not go up, because the other places are making their changes.
Okay, very cool. Hey, what is a piece of info or advice that's always stuck with you, and tell us how it's helped you?
Honestly, I would say in the beginning of your real estate investing career, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, especially like when your funds are tight. Get in there, do some painting yourself, especially if you're buying something where the renovations aren't that crazy, where you're just changing the flooring, new trim, paint. Just go ahead and do it yourself. It's not that hard. There's lots of YouTube videos out there for it. Was it Renovision DIY? I love that guy on YouTube. I learned how to paint from that guy. I learned how to install trim and flooring from that guy. Um, it really helps you understand how these renovations work, how a house is put together. And once you understand how it works, when you get a quote from the contractor in the future, you will know when they're trying to scam you and you know that joke and the mechanics like you got to change your blinker fluid.
Yeah.
Um, if someone says you got to change your flooring fluid, that's an extra $500, you know they're scamming you, right? But until you do it yourself, you don't know what's true and what's not.
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. I like it. Well, George, uh, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing everything that you shared with us. Quentin, did you have any other questions for him?
No, I'm just happy to see George, and he got rid of his glasses and I added glasses, which is kind of funny. You can only see this on the YouTube, but I know he's made some great changes. But it's really cool to see you. Is there a great place for people to get in touch with you? What do you prefer?
I'm most active. I'm big on social media, Instagram particularly. If you can follow me at Cashflow George, no dots, no spaces, no nothing. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they're all the same handles. Or you can reach me on my website at georgewang.ca and you can book a call and chat from there.
All that
Awesome.
stuff is going to be in the show notes. So
Yes.
if you missed that, just go to the show notes and all George's contact will be there. Um, an interesting note that you brought up, and one last comment I'm going to make here is that you did a lot of your investing through COVID when most investors who had been going for a while were hitting their brakes and saying, now's the time to stop. So I think that there's something to be said, and maybe this is the wrong way to put it, because obviously people like us, we educate ourselves to the best that we can before we go out and make action or take action. But there's something to be said for the naivety of being new into the market and not knowing any difference, right? Saying, where can I get the best value now? Because this is when I'm starting and I can't go back in time, you know? So I think there's something to that. Quentin, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's we don't know what we don't know. It is important to take action and try to learn from the people around you. Going to places like the Quinte Real Estate Investor Association, if you're going to invest in that area, it will help you to network with other people who are there already and learn from them. But just taking action and moving forward is great as long as you surround yourself with a quality team of people, advisors, you could call them, who help you to do that in the right way, have the same, have done what you want to do. I think that's great. That's an excellent way of, getting started.
And I do remember one of the things that stuck with me was at Durham REI one time. You were talking about getting anchored in what the way that things used to be and not understanding that the market's going to change and saying, well, I need to find that deal or else I can't move forward. And you just can't do that. You've got to readjust and work within the space that you have.
Yeah, cash flow changes. Like I remember, in 2008 when Pickering was, you could buy a single family home and cash flow 100, $200 a month after, just purchasing anything off the MLS. And then it slowly, you couldn't do it anymore. It had to be Whitby, then Oshawa, then like Bowmanville. So, and the strategy had to change too. So you had to do, duplex conversions. Now it's looking at, in the same area, now it's looking at maybe taking a single family and creating 3 units or 4 units out of it in order to make the numbers work. So, getting stuck in a mindset, you have to have a growth mindset for real estate investing, if you want to scale it and grow it for sure.
All right. And on that note, thank you again, George. Really appreciate you being here. Quentin, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah, you can get in touch with me by, you can check me out on Instagram or social media at QmanREI. You can look me up at durhamrei.ca or quintindesouza.com. Either of those is a great place, websites you can get in touch with me.
And people can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. Thanks for joining us again, everybody. Appreciate it. Go out there and take some action. And we'll see you next time. We got a little bit of housekeeping, I guess. Introduce Quentin into the show and that kind of thing, and then we'll get to you.
Are you the new co-host, Quentin?
I am the new co-host. You can call me Break 3, or because we had Break 2, now it's Break 3. I don't know. I just make up shit. Okay.
And
But yeah,
that's the kind of wit we want you to bring to the show.
that's wit? Oh my God, we're in trouble. Oh crap.